My name is Alexandra Hyson. I'm originally from Slovakia, and about 9 years ago now, I was part of University of Aberdeen as well. I graduated with a MA in Management Studies and Economics, and right now I work as a business integrated business transformation manager at EY in Australia.
Thank you very much. And why did you decide to do your bachelor's degree in Aberdeen?
I think it was potentially just the wanting to go and study abroad. So at that time, it was free for the all the
Hmm.
European Union students to go study in Scotland, and they obviously have very good universities. So I thought that would be an exciting thing. Definitely wasn't the weather that convinced me.
Interesting. But you also did exchange year at the university at the Salamanca. How did this international experience shape your approach to business
Mhm.
and yeah and finance?
Yeah. So the University of Salamanca that year was really great. So
Mm,
not only it was a really big challenge to have to live and study in a different
mm,
language, in Spanish, because specifically in Salamanca, I know
mm,
that in some other Erasmus
mm.
countries, they kind of allow you to study in English, but in Salamanca it was purely Spanish. So that was a huge challenge. But at the same time, it was a great opportunity because the Department of Economics at the University of Salamanca is one of the best in Europe. So it was just this great opportunity to study really interesting topics from micro and macroeconomics and so on. And it was also great to meet a lot of international people, lots of international
Yeah.
students, get new perspectives, make new friendships. So I think all of that combined, is kind of what adds up and really inspires you then to continue with your international education. And I think it sort of will also led me to become a consultant
Mm,
because for a consultant, there's nothing better than having international expertise,
yeah.
experience, and so that you can bring in diverse points of view.
Interesting. And how would you summarize your career? What are key milestones in your career journey?
Mhm. So I started as a junior management consultant in a company
Mm,
called Enzen UK.
yeah.
And Enzen was essentially a smaller consulting firm.
Mm,
We only focused on energy sector and utility sector.
mm,
And I guess the key milestone was when they've asked me to relocate to from the UK to Australia after about a year and a half. Because
mhm,
they just won a new big client contract with a large electricity distribution network. That was my first big work travel engagement, and it was
mhm.
just so great because you get to go to this really big
Yeah.
exotic country like Australia. You get to kind of live in a hotel and work at the different countries. So it was really really exciting. So that was the first big milestone. That was about 2018, 2019. And then I guess the second one was when I decided to actually come back to Europe and join Accenture, which is one of the biggest consulting
Mhm,
firms in the world, back in Prague, closer to
mhm.
home. So Accenture being a huge company, they obviously have their own methodologies, their own ways of doing things. So it was almost like relearning everything I learned before again and
Mhm.
starting from, it almost felt like starting from like being a
Yeah.
junior again. But at the same time, looking back, it was just great to do that.
Yeah.
And I guess the third biggest, and then with Accenture, I got to move back to Australia again.
Mm,
And the third biggest milestone was probably when I joined EY, one of the big four. I already joined as a manager for their new practice that was the IBT or Integrated Business Transformation with a pure narrow focus on helping
mhm,
clients go through finance transformation. So that was when I really narrowed down that this is what I want to do. I want to work in part of the
mhm.
finance transformations, and that's where I've been since.
Interesting, very impressive. And how would you say working in different like global markets like UK, Central Europe, and Asia Pacific different from each other?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So, like I said before, I think
Hmm.
having international experience,
Hmm.
it's so great for a consultant, right? Because
Yeah.
you get to really look at how businesses operate in different worlds, and then you get to bring that point of view to
Hmm.
your clients, right? And it's almost like you get to sort of bring in fresh perspective. You constantly get to question everything because you've seen how it's
Yeah.
done across borders. So one of the major things I've learned that obviously wherever you go, every market has different ways of working, has got different culture.
Yeah.
As an example, in the UK, in Australia, what I find people like to be, quite direct. They like face-to-face meetings. They like to be very, structured in those meetings. They like to share their feedback openly.
Yeah.
Whereas, when you go to maybe some of the Asia Pacific regions, there's a lot more focus on the relationships. The hierarchy plays a much bigger role in there. So, as an example, right now I lead a team that is based in Manila, Philippines, and that as a
Mm.
culture that's got a
Yeah.
very strong sort of culture of maybe deference to seniority. So
Yeah.
when I ask for an open feedback, sometimes my team would be hesitant to like challenge me
Hmm.
openly, right? So those
Yeah.
kind of things, those kind of nuances that you pick up as you gain this international experience, and then you get to tailor
Hmm.
tailor your management style and
Yeah.
approach to that, so that you get to work with a diverse team.
Interesting. And what's your typical day looks like at work?
Well, it sounds like a bit of a cliche, but it really does look different every
Hmm.
day. So right now, for example, we are leading a big finance transformation
Hmm.
program for a client based here in Australia. It's a big construction
Yeah.
company. So the first 6 months were effectively designing of what that future state going to look like, right? So that, what that meant in practice was a lot of traveling to their offices in Melbourne and in Perth,
Hmm.
and talking to the finance managers about their vision for what they want to do in the future, how they want to structure their organization, then working with them through the details, documenting that, and then presenting into the leadership. Then we brought in this new team from the offshore team from Manila to actually help them support some of the back office operations, some of the like core finance
Hmm.
operations. So right now my days look like more of a the finance calendar is kind of what rules the day. So you have your monthly things that you have to do, and I have to oversee. I'm making sure that the team delivers
Yeah.
on what we're supposed to. Part of that is also then having to go and talk to the clients about, what are some of the future opportunities
Hmm.
that we need to do? How does the pipeline for the next few years look like?
Hmm.
And then, as an example, in a couple of weeks, I'll be traveling to Philippines to actually be with the team on
Nice.
the ground and working with them there. So it's very diverse, very different, but I do like it.
That's very interesting. And what is the proudest moment throughout all of your career?
Oh, goodness, that's a tough question. I have to say, I don't think I have one
Hmm.
particular one. There's been some great projects that I worked on across my career. Some that, that really I felt like have got a tangible impact for the client. As an example, I helped to launch a new direct-to-consumer business model for a big car company
Hmm.
in Europe. And that will effectively change how the customers will be buying from the car maker, how the car maker is going to
Yeah.
deal with their network of dealers and so on. The other one that I could mention is we worked on a big project with the New Zealand government where we were helping
Hmm.
them define how should they measure the benefits that the government provides to their people, right, to all their citizens,
Yeah.
and how do you define that, right? And that's what they're
Yeah.
going to be measured on going forward. So, great things that, hopefully have got a tangible impact. And it was just great to be part of those projects.
Interesting. Very impressive. And what trends do you see changing your industry in the future?
Hmm. In the industry, you mean like finance?
Well, yes, like business consulting.
Hmm.
Yeah, would be
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
So maybe I'll start with finance, and because that's kind of where I play mostly.
Yeah.
So what I obviously see a lot is, there's a lot of talk about AI
Hmm.
automation, right? And all those things are kind of coming and just changing the way people work. So
Yeah.
a lot of that, particularly in finance, for example, there's a lot of transactional work, right? Like invoice
Hmm.
processing and like report,
Yeah.
making. All of that is slowly moving away from
Hmm.
people. And so that people have, and even going to technology, and people have got more time, I guess, more space to actually focus on the more higher value work, right? Like advising
Hmm.
decisions, making judgments.
Yeah.
So what, how do you, so it's, I mean, on the one side, that's great. On the
Yeah.
other side, it's how do you train and upskill the people to actually be able to step into those roles?
Hmm.
Other thing that is kind of disrupting the industry, I would say potentially is generative AI, right? Over
Yeah.
the past couple of years, especially. So again, as an example, in the past, you would have, a finance manager who would come to his team and they'll be like, I want to know what are my trends
Hmm.
for non-paying customers.
Yeah.
So his team would be like digging through the data and maybe it would take them a couple of days. And then they would have to be building pivot tables, and then
Hmm.
they would have to spend another couple of days to build it into a presentation. And maybe then they would like get to present this for an hour to their manager, right? With some insight.
Hmm.
Now with the generative AI models, like you can get to that endpoint within seconds, right?
Yeah.
So again, how do you, leverage, and what new opportunities does it unlock for the industry, right? And
Hmm.
at the same time, on the other side is like, how do you trust that AI to, to actually like, be able to trust the advice that it provides. So those are all kinds of
Hmm.
questions that the clients constantly ask us. And, like nobody really has the answers. It's sort of like, how do we work through that together? And where do you start? I think that's the main one. Where do you start? Because sometimes it can be so overwhelming with all these things that are happening. So you have to pick a point and start
Hmm.
somewhere, basically.
Very interesting. And in your opinion, what are the best ways for students to uh, benefit from networking? Or is there is a point for students to network?
Hmm. I think definitely, right? And I think, especially for students who would be interested in a career like consulting, right?
Hmm.
I think the entire consulting industry is around building effective networks, right?
Hmm.
Because you very, very like, not almost never you see consultants kind of cold calling clients. It's
Hmm.
always, somebody knows somebody maybe through
Yeah.
like old uni network that now that person is, a, CEO of a company, right?
Yeah.
And that's the network that you built years ago that you can kind of continue cultivating, and in the future it might become
Hmm.
an opportunity to collaborate. And yeah, I'm not saying that all the networking should be with the purpose of, I'm thinking that
Yeah.
in the future you'll be useful to me, but it's about how, those networks that you build at university, especially with like-minded people, as you progress in your career, those people progress in their career,
Hmm.
and those become very valuable connections in the future, whether you're looking for a new job, whether you're looking for a new client,
Hmm.
whether you're looking for, a business partner or anything like that. So I mean, personally, while I was at uni, I tried to join as many clubs and sort of societies
Hmm.
as I could. I was the business school convener that, allowed me to spend a lot of time with the business school students. And then I tried to venture out as well, just outside of uni
Yeah.
circles, and was part of Toastmasters, for example, to help, hone in on my communication and presentation skills and many different things. So I
Hmm.
definitely think that the networks are very, very valuable for
Hmm.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And are there any books or podcasts you would recommend for students?
Hmm. Uh, so I guess I can tell you what are some of my favorite ones. Obviously, some of them might be more geared towards like my, what I do specifically.
Yeah,
Especially on the podcast, I do listen to like a lot of finance stuff so that just I can
yeah.
kind of keep up to date with what's happening. So I listen to a lot of like CFO Weekly, for
Mm-hmm.
example. On the books, I do like a bit of diversity of point of
Mm-hmm.
view. So, recently I've read a really good book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, and it's all
Mm-hmm.
about the art of negotiating, which is very, very
Yeah.
valuable when you're in a business setting. But then I also like to kind of venture out, and the other one that was really inspiring was Let My People Go Surfing by Yvon Chouinard.
Mm-hmm.
He's the founder of Patagonia. And it
Mm-hmm.
was just great to see, how, the business is really not only about the bottom line, but you actually, there's people who really want to make a difference with their companies and brands. I do read a lot of books around kind of practicing soft skills and just understanding how
Mm-hmm.
humans work and what's the best way to interact and connect with people, because that's a huge part of my job.
Mm-hmm.
So great books that I read in the past were Think Again by Adam
Yeah.
Grant. He's a psychologist, very,
Mm-hmm.
very good. Influence, Robert Cialdini, I think, just about how to influence, how to be able to influence people. And then I personally am very into, like technology and trends. So a very good one that I read recently was Life 3.0
Mm-hmm.
by Max Tegmark. So that
Yeah.
one was just kind of, what will the future of AI look like?
Mm-hmm.
Really interesting insight there as well.
That's very interesting. Thank you for this advice. And the last question is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Great question. I would probably say to my younger self, stay curious.
Mm-hmm.
And don't be too worried or, about picking the right job or
Yeah.
narrowing your focus too quickly, right? I think maybe that's what sometimes happens with people kind of coming out of uni. They're ready to start work, but
Mm-hmm.
they are really stressed about what if it's not the right job? What if I make a mistake? And I would probably say like, your career is going to be so long. You have so much time. So you're really going to have to worry about finding the right thing. Just be curious and say yes to most things, right? Because every experience can bring you something. It'll bring you some sort of learning,
Mm-hmm.
or can potentially lead to the other thing. So I would say, yeah, be curious, say yes, and you never know
Yeah.
where your journey will lead.